This is Printed and Pressed. I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're back to our good old boy, Clive Staples Lewis, for yet
Chris's
another
favorite
book.
and only author.
My buddy Clive. All right.
Yeah.
You got his poster up in your on your.
No, we found out before we started that Andrew is actually closer to C.S. Lewis because he knows his sex life.
Oh my gosh! I just jokingly said he's a 30-year-old virgin, and you guys were like, "Okay." You believed me for 2 seconds.
So, fun fact: I found this out through a comedian.
Fun fact: Chris actually knows this answer.
I found this out through a comedian that apparently, I think Newton was a virgin his whole life.
Yeah, that's not a secret.
I didn't know that. Like, my goodness. Anyways,
he was too busy with the sciences.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Anyways, this book right here is the first of the 3 in the Space Trilogy. If you didn't know it, it's Space Trilogy Book 1. Don't buy whatever weird hardcover that Andrew bought because apparently the build quality is absolutely terrible.
It's just
he said that parts of it were falling out. What year is the copyright on that one? Just so that anybody's looking for it knows.
Year of this copyright. Let me make sure that page didn't fall out.
I mean, because mine's 96.
The page fell out.
Did it really?
I think so. 1 second. I'm looking.
Because it's the Scribner Classic Edition, 1996.
Yeah, the one that Chris and I have are both really nice.
Well, this is not something to say was a good manufactured in the United States of America.
Was it?
Yeah. No, it doesn't tell me the copyright on it.
Huh. Well, I'm going to assume it's either earlier or later than this set because this set, the quality's good. When you said the quality is bad, I was like, what? Because I thought you got this kind. I thought you got the one we got.
Here's a page that just comes out.
It's a feature. It's a feature.
Yeah, no, it's like every other 2 pages.
Oh, good.
It's just the little fold in the page comes out.
Wonderful.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's if it was Braille, it'd make sense, but it's not.
It was Braille. Oh my. Speaking of Braille, that reminds me of is it like the Book of Eli, that movie about the guy? I like that movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
That definitely go check that out if you've never seen it. Has nothing to do with this book, but definitely go check that one out. It's a good movie. I think I've got it on Blu-ray sitting right over here if I had to go get it. But all right, so the Space Trilogy book 1. I think we can all agree, without Andrew having even read the other 2, that this is probably the weakest one out of the 3.
Yes. Andrew's just gonna nod his head. It's like,
I'm just gonna nod. I don't like this one nearly.
The reason you read this book is because the next book is probably C.S. Lewis's pinnacle, in my opinion, of his fictional works. I think Perelandra is far and above.
As far as emotional toll, I think the third book is the best written of the 3, but we don't need to get into that just yet.
Yeah, I mean,
fair enough. But in my opinion, from cover to cover, that's the best book. He's a fictional book he ever wrote. But this one, you have to read this one to get like a feel for who Dr. Ransom is and how he gets to hit the point where he's at.
I also don't think you need to read this book to understand the second one.
You don't need it for the understanding of the second book, but I think it does set up nicely the world that C.S. Lewis is trying to build. This is like a world building book that is kind of optional. I wouldn't say it's necessary. Like it's, how he wrote Narnia in a way where the books could kind of be standalone to an extent, and you wouldn't necessarily need all of them.
Yeah.
This is one of those books that you wouldn't necessarily need to get the gist of the story.
Yeah. Not saying like don't compare the quality of the books, but like you could read. The
Horse and His Boy.
The Horse and His Boy, or not, and you would still be able to read Prince Caspian just fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how this goes.
There's only a couple books like that though in Narnia. There's like 3 that you kind of need to read if you're going to read them. But
anyway, so let's get into the summary of this book. So the book starts off with, and for those who don't know, Dr. Ransom is like a caricature of like real life J.R.R. Tolkien, as written by C.S. Lewis, one of his obviously closest friends. So it's kind of funny reading this book knowing that this is like a snapshot of what C.S. Lewis saw J.R.R. Tolkien as, because it starts off with him just wandering on his own. Nobody knows where he's going. And I'm just was Tolkien known for wandering off where nobody knew where he was going.
Just with where this book goes, though, it's totally Tolkien on an acid trip or something.
Well, he's not having an acid trip. He's actually smoking the Hobbit's leaf.
Yeah, the Hobbit's leaf.
Yeah.
Hallucinating over here, because that's what this entire book comes off as a story.
But anyways, so like he's off. We're back to the whole trope of, don't talk to strangers, because Dr. Ransom is trying to find a place for the night to stay. Finds out nobody will let him stay in whatever village he was trying to stay at. And then when he gets to the next town, there's only one house. It's like this lady is like, my son is at work late. Oh no, go get him for me. And he's like, sure, lady, I'll go get him. And so he hops down the road.
It's like a RPG.
He hops a fence.
Well, okay. When we get there too, there's the whole lesson about like, maybe you should trust your gut when you think it's a bad idea. Don't do it.
Because then he gets to the fence and he sees like this beat up old mansion and there's like some people outside. He's like, maybe not. But I already promised this woman who I don't even know. I don't even know her, but I promise I might.
Looks like a bad idea, but I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah. Then he gets in there, and the two professors or whatever they are like old colleagues of his that he didn't like. It's like on top of this already being a bad idea, and then he's like, "Well, I'll stay here for the night."
And then he trusts them and tells them all sorts of details about how no one knows where I'm at now.
Yeah, he's a perfect candidate.
Yeah,
it's like, you literally set yourself up there, man.
Yeah.
So I thought that like the way that this book opens up is like the perfect like fool's errand.
Dude, the way this book opens up is his favorite trope of every book he writes.
Yeah.
Don't trust strangers.
Don't trust strangers.
Yeah. You have to wonder what happened to him.
C.S. Lewis did the stranger danger.
Yes.
Again.
PSA before anyone else. And it's just like, who hurt you?
Yes. What van did he get into?
Maybe it was a lesson for his kids or stepkids. Well, I think he only had stepkids.
I'm just saying, man, someone hurt C.S. Lewis.
Yeah. Somebody must have, yeah. So anyways, Dr. Ransom gets tricked in the most obvious way possible. But
is he tricked? Is he really tricked? Can we just... He's captured.
He's captured. He's tricked into a journey that he wasn't like... Well, he obviously was meant to go on it based on the rest of the book, but he ends up on a space journey accidentally.
As one does.
Not so accidentally for the other two men that tricked him, but they get on this ship. And the most interesting thing about the science of the ship is it's a sphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not like a spaceship like what we think of as spaceships. They blast off with propulsion and everything else. It's a literal sphere. And so when they're in space on this journey, he talks about how they're like walking around a artificial gravity created by the sphere, which is really neat, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty cool concept. And they put all their storage inside of the sphere. And in the ship, they can wander around and everything. Like the floor is always the globe in the center, and the ceiling is always the outer boundary of the ship. So it's like a really different spaceship because you don't think about these kind of design characteristics generally because we know what a rocket ship looks like.
If you're into some science fiction, like in just proposals though for future spacecraft that can mimic gravity, you would be more familiar with spheres because they always talk about inducing a spin on the ship to create its own gravitational pull.
Well, they have that the Mormon spaceship in The Expanse where it has that spinning ring around the outside.
It is much more common with I guess concept designs for future spacecraft.
Oh, I'm sure it is, but
living in the future. But
the people living in today's day and age that don't think about rockets on a daily basis.
Yeah,
we just think about like the Voyager and
the phallic ship one of Bezos. That's
whatever. Anyways, long story short, it's a neat concept. It makes a lot of sense. And this is in the 1930s when he wrote this book, so well before space travel was actually like a viable thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he talks about how like the environment of space involves them taking off all their clothes because of the sun on one side, and then on the other side there's no sun, so it's super cold, so they put on all their clothes and go to bed. It's like he's thinking about a lot of stuff when it comes to this.
He read one pop sci article and then wrote a book.
The only thing that he didn't really consider, in my opinion, is there's no spacesuit when they get to Malacandra or Mars, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, the assumption is they didn't need it.
Yeah.
The assumption, yes.
No, okay, Chris. At this point in time, I'm pretty sure people still thought that there could be life on Venus. Like
On Venus or Mars?
no, Venus and Mars, but like people thought that Venus might be like a lush rainforest type.
Yeah, well, Venus is
planet.
our sister planet, so almost exactly the same size.
Yeah,
But
But
it
so
has
is,
an
is
atmosphere.
it closer or farther?
it's closer to the sun.
It's close
I don't
to
know
the
my
sun.
planet orders.
But
to be
people
honest with you.
people thought that Venus might be like a dense rainforest type planet.
Huh.
That was the early thought process.
Interesting.
That's
And
why
then
when
they
you play
finally sent
Destiny,
shit there.
if you play Destiny, that's why it's a rainforest in the game. But anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But then we sent probes there like first and found out, oh, we need to go the other way.
So I will be honest, I think the bulk of the plot occurs in a very short order, and most of what happens is him describing like space in this book and like the various other planets, kind of the makeup of the Oyarsa and the other groups of people on the thing. The funniest thing about these books is Maleldil or Maleldil, that's the right name.
Yeah.
He's like considered the god above all these guardian angel things.
Mhm.
And actually the Latin, where he used that word like mal, it's like bad. So it's like the great god is a bad guy based on the way he created that name, because mal is usually like a bad word or to describe something that's wicked or bad or evil. Like malcontempt, like that word should not be used for what he used it for. Anyways,
Yeah, he's
Just-
creating his own philology or whatever.
I know he is, but it's funny because a lot
Hey
of
man,
other
it's
things
about the
line up.
languages being different. He's trying to figure out how languages work on this other planet.
I just thought it was funny.
Which is
that he
why it's
decided, like,
funny.
of all the things he could have picked, he picks bad as good for this particular setup. But long story short, they get to the
I
planet.
think the concept is though, Chris, that people are bad. Like, so we're
Fallen,
we'll get there.
But
Well,
anyways,
we're basically the fallen people. That's the concept. Like that's the conclusion of the book.
Oh.
So
Who is the
it's-
silent planet? I guess that's ties into your point here.
Falcandra.
yeah.
Anyway.
So, but the thing is, if it's
I want to get through the
bad-
summary though. We're
Okay.
still in space.
Fine.
So-
please.
We're still in space.
Throughout the space travel, he finds out that they're planning to betray him, or they already did, I guess. But they're planning to give him away to the Sorn,
Betray him more.
this alien race, and they think that they obviously don't understand this race on the planet because they're like, we don't know what they want to do with him. Maybe they'll eat him. Who knows? And he's like, oh shoot, I guess I better plan to run. And he sneaks into the kitchen and steals a knife because like that's gonna save him against alien life forms. But anyways,
Gotta try.
Yeah.
Gotta.
as soon as they pretty much get there, the beast in the water shows up and freaks everybody out, and he just takes off, goes for like multiple days running as far as he can away from the ship, which in my mind, the ship's probably got the most amount of things that's going to keep you sustained. Should betray the other two shipmates.
I was gonna say he might as well just ran into the ship, closed the door,
locked it. Yeah, exactly. But anyways, that would have changed the whole book. But so he ends up lost in the forest, and he comes across essentially like a biped otter or walrus or whatever that thing is, and it basically
It's the beaver from Narnia.
Yeah.
it could be, but long
Just
story
longer
short,
instead of fat.
He's
Dr.
useless,
Ransom is the perfect person to run into alien species because he's a philologist. Whoa. So he ends up being essentially the same thing as Dr. Daniel O'Connor from Stargate. He knows how to speak all these ancient alien languages. And that's
that
the right
makes
name, right?
sense.
Isn't it Daniel O'Connor? Is that the right name?
I don't remember.
Oh, whatever. Daniel from Stargate. I don't remember what his last name is. And they end up he ends up figuring out the language somehow or another by kind of mapping out.
Daniel had a bit of an upper hand on that though, because it was just ancient Greek or Egyptian.
Yeah, I mean he did. You're not wrong about that, but Dr. Ransom figured out alien languages that were being spoken and not written.
He could already speak Otter, so he had that.
Yeah. And then of course he finds out like the whole time. The funniest thing to me is the whole time he's on this planet, he's trying to figure out the order of things. He wants to know who's above who.
Yeah, because you forgot to mention the Sorns.
Well, he hasn't seen the Sorns yet.
Yes,
He had a brief glimpse of them. That's
the important concept here. It's the Sorns.
That's why he
given to the Sorns. That's who he's fleeing from.
I already talked about that. Remember, they said that they were going to give him to the Sorns, and that's why
I
he
didn't
decided
hear
he
you
wanted to
say
flee in the
Sorns
first
though.
place.
That's what I was putting it.
I did.
Okay.
So, long story short, he runs into the beaver-looking thing and discovers their entire colony on the planet in the area that he's in anyway.
Yeah.
And it turns out that they're not like the smartest bunch,
They're
but
poets, man.
They fulfill a very essential role on the planet. Like they do a lot of hunting. They do stuff with the fish. They're poetic, like Andrew mentioned. They have their own niche essentially on the planet.
Yeah.
And eventually he like earns their trust, and they start telling him other things like about the Oyarsa and what the Eldials. Is that what they're called? Eldials? Yeah, Eldials. Yeah. Which are basically like what I would think of as like an energy angel, I guess. They're like spirits or something along those lines.
Kind of, yeah.
And they serve the master of the planet, which is the Oyarsa, which is like the master Eldial or whatever. And the Oyarsa are subject to the anyways, long story short, there's like a whole chain. There's like a whole chain of spiritual
chain of command.
Yeah, with the spirits.
Yeah.
And then he ends up befriending multiple otters, learns all about them. Then they go on the Great Hunt, or like the search for Moby Dick, or whatever you want to call it. But they find like this other Hanakra or something. And when he just tells them that thing exists, they're like, all spears ready, get the ships. Like, we got to go kill this thing. It's like, what? Like, the whole time they're like peaceful. And as soon as they find out about this Hanakra thing, you got to kill it.
They're ready. Ready to go.
It's like, we write poetry about these kills. So
hey man, anything that is their muse for a poem is what they're down for. Except the whole time, real war.
If there's like three things that Dr. Ransom's concerned about with the species is like, are you guys subject to the Sorns or somebody else? Right? That's the first thing. How could you be satisfied with having young one time? Because they only have young one.
They mate once.
Time, yeah. Yeah, they mate one time throughout their whole lives. Mm-hmm. And given the two things prior, why do you want to kill the Hanakra thing? He's like, oh, we don't view it that way. Like, okay, whatever. Yeah. So that whole situation is just kind of funny. It's like it's classic C.S. Lewis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then of course during that they kill the Hanakra. His buddy Otter, whatever his name is, I can't remember. Hayoi
or something like that.
Yeah. So he's essentially met his life accomplishment. Like killing a Hanakra is like their ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, they will, poets will write stories about this forever. And then of course, that's a very short-lived happiness, because immediately after they hear pow, and Dr. Weston kills the otter. Yeah. So, Dr. Weston's a bad guy, clearly. If he wasn't before, now that he's killed the otter.
Yeah, make that otter coat, man.
He is definitely a bad guy now. And Hayoi, because he's the ever loyal and just absolutely brilliant otter he says that Dr. Ransom will always be a Hanakra killer.
Yeah.
Because and so like that means that's like bro code for we're cool. We're cool, bro. Even though I just died because of you, we're cool. And the other otter dude that was with them, why can't I think of the names? Anyways.
Because their names were weird, Chris. Let's be honest.
The Hana or whatever. But oh no, they're all Hana.
The other one was a W name. It was Win, actually.
Well, there was
his name was Win.
But there was the Fliffle trigger or whatever the heck the third.
Oh my gosh, yep.
Yeah, I never actually tried to pronounce that.
But I can't think of what the otters were.
That's
called.
when C.S. had a stroke on the keyboard and just like
the Hana or whatever.
No, the Hana is not their actual name. That's what they all are. The Sorns,
they're some H-A-S-A Harasa.
Yeah, Harasa.
Yeah.
That's right. You're right.
A weird way of saying a name for otters.
It's probably because of he's just assuming the way these things pronounce words, they add an H to everything.
Well, they're probably just the Rasa.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They add an H sound to everything. It'd be like trying to ask them what? Like, what? Anyways. So then they decide that because the Eldial, before they went out to kill the Hanakra, had said, you must take Dr. Ransom to the Oyarsa. And they said, no, we need to finish this Hanakra kill first. Long story short, Otter dude dies. And of course, because of that, they realize that they cannot they can't to follow what the LDL said. So he's like, clearly bad thing happened because we didn't do what the LDL said. We're taking Dr. Ransom there immediately, so no more Harasa have to die. And so they tell him to go a specific route.
Yeah.
And then when he goes that route, it almost kills him. And the Sorns are like, yeah, the Harasa aren't always the smartest people on this planet. They sent you the route that might kill you. So then he goes on this second route. This is like the second part of his journey, carried by a Sorn.
Yeah.
So he's basically riding a giant. He's riding on Goliath all the way across the planet. And he meets another Sorn. They have some random discussions. They ask him about like bent people on his planet. They're very confused.
Bent people?
That's what they call it. Remember,
Yeah.
they're like wicked or evil. Because they don't have a word for it. Because there is no evil on this planet, apparently. Not till he got there.
They have bent. It's just a way of saying you're defective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, right. But they don't know the word evil. They don't have bad, evil, those kinds of words. So bent is their equivalent.
I mean, you would argue that evil is defective.
Fair.
So it's just a different word to describe it.
After the Sorn journey, which is more of an interesting kind of a retrospective of the planet, because you get to see all kinds of things that you don't see with the Harasa part. There's really not a lot of plot involved in the Sorn portion, other than him learning about the Oryarsa and all the other stuff. And then finally, you get to the third part of the book is when he's like, there's a whole part of this book dedicated to just the conversation with the Oryarsa and what happens with Weston and Divine.
Oh my gosh,
and,
when Weston shows up there, man, that part is when he's trying to speak native.
It's so annoying.
Whiz bang, you dead is like said like 5,000 times in like 2 pages.
Well, he keeps trying to threaten them like it's gonna change something. It's like, no, dude, you're just a dumbass.
He just goes whoosh, bang, you dead. And he just
I will threaten you multiple times so that you know that you will die. Anyways, so basically throughout this entire negotiation, the Oryarsa is just trying to figure out what motivates Weston and Divine and Ransom.
More than that, though, he's also wanting to understand more about Earth.
Yeah, he wants to know about Thulkandra, is what they call it, or the Silent Planet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And basically what you find out is you can kind of infer it. I don't remember if they explain it all the way down to the detail until Paralander or not, but basically the only planet that has lost touch with the rest of the planets in the solar system is Earth.
It is explained.
Because of the fallen nature of man. Because of the evil one.
It's the Oyastra, or however you say it, is
they turned, right?
Well, he went to war with everyone else. The one for Earth went to war with everyone else and basically tried to destroy this planet they're currently on. So
he's the bent one.
Silenced him, basically.
Yeah. Anyway, so long story short, they find out the thing that kind of was interesting to me about Divine was as he's like going through the questions, he's like, well, this person isn't evil. They're so warped in what they prioritize because the Oyarsa has taken away what they should be prioritizing. And he's talking about how the propagation of his species is the most important thing to him. Like he doesn't care about anything else.
It's to the point where he doesn't actually. He claims he cares about man, right? But he does not care about man because he's more than willing to sacrifice other men. The only thing he cares about is the seed of men.
Yep.
Specifically, his seed, in a sense. So that's where he goes with that. It's been technically a virtue of caring about man has been turned into a sin.
Yep.
Yeah. It was interesting because they go through that conversation all about how you can take a good and turn it into a bad. And especially if that one thing is the only thing you care about, you throw away all their virtue for that one virtue to the extreme.
I can touch on that more when we finish the summary, though.
So anyways, after he gets through all the interviews, he decides, I'm not going to kill anybody, even though he points out, I can make all of y'all disappear. Yeah. And he shows them he can do that because the 3 otters that died on their way there, they bring the bodies in, and he's like, magic disappear. See ya. Go to the other world or the afterlife, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And they just go, zoop, and Weston and Divine are like, what? Actually, no, because Weston wasn't there or Divine wasn't there. Which one was gone? One of them was
Weston
gone.
didn't see it. Divine saw it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
For the context of the audience right now, Divine is the one who just wants gold.
Mhm.
Weston's the scientist who wants to propagate.
Oh yeah, C.S. Lewis
mankind.
hates scientists. Keep that in mind.
He hates scientists for the sake of science. He doesn't mind them all across the board, obviously.
We don't know this.
Well, we'll get into the nuances later, Chris, because
Yeah.
it's quite clear what types C.S. Lewis hates.
Yeah. All right. So when we get into that point, then the Oyer side grants them. He asks Weston or one of the two other scientists that is not Dr.
He asks
Ransom
Weston
how long it will take them to get home. And he said he like literally sits there and calculates out 90 days. It'll be 90 days. And like, all right, I'll give you everything you need for a 90 days journey. If you don't make it back in 90 days, you'll go.
Shucks, I would have overestimated how long. I wouldn't have been so precise.
Yep.
I would just be like 120.
Yeah.
And then he's
3
like, Ransom,
years.
yes. And he's like, Ransom, do you want to stay here or go home? He's like, I'll go home with my fellow man. He's like, are you sure I could just beam you back there? Like, no, I'll go on the ship. What?
He was going to keep him. He was going to keep him on the planet.
Well, no, you gave him like 3 options. It was like, I'll keep you here, I send you back, or I send you on the ship. And he's like, I'll take the ship. It's like,
I don't recall him being given the option to be beamed back, Chris.
I thought he had the option to get beamed back.
No,
maybe
I'm
misremembering. Maybe I'm
You're
misremembering.
misremembering. There's no way.
I think that's the second book, Chris.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the second book he gets beamed in a coffin.
Yeah.
There's no effing way he's going to go back on that ship if he gets beamed back.
Well, they should just give him the coffin ship from the second book, but clearly C.S. Lewis hadn't thought that through yet. So he gets on the ship, and literally the return journey is a slog to read through.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, and it's like it's a nice picture of what's going on, but like none of that is driving the plot. None of it. So
the book ends at this point, basically, for what matters.
All the things that matter for book 2 have already happened.
Yeah.
The last bit is just the survival story of Dr. Ransom, and it kind of explains the next book a little bit, like why he's so bent out of shape a little bit before.
But he has a fun at the end of this book. There's a really fun
it's a deep dive in philosophy.
And there's a fun little extra chapter, basically.
Oh yeah.
Where
the note
where he is writing there, he basically has correspondence with the person writing the book. And he's pretending that to me it just made it really seem like he really was just documenting Tolkien's hallucinations.
He totally was. As soon as he brought it up, I'm like, oh yep, that's what happened.
Yeah. And this is really the story of how Tolkien invented Elvish, but they didn't want to say that it was an otter species. So it's just like, what's cooler than otters, dude? Oh, let's go with elves. And then let's just make the elves totally different than all other elves because that's lame too.
That is what Tolkien did, though. He did invent elves pretty different from anybody else.
Yeah, man, because he was like, otters are ridiculous, but if I'm going to change it from the original, I might as well change what I'm changing it to. So.
Oh man, I have to admit, I don't know were they friends yet in the 30s? When did they become friends? Yeah, okay.
They met.
I mean, if he wrote this book modeling the main character off of Tolkien,
that's a good point.
Friends.
That's a good point.
And I think he learned too much of Tolkien's writing style for how he wrote the beginning of this book.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It is a slog.
Well, actually, when he wrote the space trilogy, so a fun story about this. This is something I read up on recently. Well, not that recent, within the last year. When C.S. Lewis was writing the space trilogy, him and Tolkien had like a handshake agreement. They were each going to write books that like kind of had cameos in each other. Mm-hmm. And so there was supposed to be some kind of cameo in some space story that Tolkien was going to write. And Tolkien basically ended up not writing it at all and just doing.
He just made him Tom Bombadil. Just kidding.
No, he made him Treebeard.
Oh yeah.
So they at the end of this book, you get that interview where he basically says like that's actually a lead up for the next book. So you get like a weird glimpse into what's going to happen in the next book.
It's a good thing. I think that's the only reason we keep reading after he's done talking to the Oyarsa.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the whole summary shortened version. It's only like 160 pages depending on which.
Yeah, we basically told the whole book right there, Chris.
Yeah. So like it's really not like the longest. it's like in line with how long the Narnia books are, slightly shorter.
Significantly.
There's definitely a reason why
more
these books
tedious
are not as popular as the Narnia books.
Yeah.
Well, they were written well before Narnia. But I think Paralandra, the next book, is worth reading. This, like, I would read Out of the Side of the Planet and then read Paralandra, and that'd be worth reading. But I guess, what do you guys think? Andrew, is your first time through?
My first time through this book. All right. I understand he's trying to world build right now with this book. I just think that his world building suffers because it's a very tedious first like 2/3 of the book, and it's not rewarded with what I think is a compelling world once he gets there, because he makes everything so weird. It's not. It's because, okay, for context to everybody, it's supposed to be a lower gravity planet, so everything's like elongated and skinny and weird, right? So these otters are basically the long dachshund of the family, and it's just a really weird universe when he's adding the talking like the language element and everything to it, and then the other species is
Mars will have
38%
38% of the gravity. 38%. So actually, it's quite a bit lower.
Yeah, but I'm saying when it comes to how he designed, I wish he had just created actual aliens that were normal looking instead of creating weird hodgepodges of species out of earthly creatures. Because every single one of them,
the Sorens were the most alien out of the three.
Yeah, but all three of them are wacky.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that really stuck with me, is how wacky everything was, versus compare it to Narnia, right? Where everything is like kind of cool.
Yeah. Besides that freaking ape.
Yeah. But it's just a very contrasting thing when you know how he writes Narnia versus that. And I think if he created something more novel instead of just, I'll say this, to me, it's Uncanny Valley, where everything is just made odd for the sake of being odd, and not in a way that contributes to the story.
Because it's an acid trip.
Yes, exactly. That's
felt
what convinced me. It's just wacky, and it's just like, this is a cool.
I felt like this book in particular, where he's making up these alien species, to me, it almost felt like he wanted them to be so different from anything anybody thought of. You know, it's not little green men. It's not people that look like us. It's something different. He wanted to make shock with the expectations a little bit, because these harmonious species, these three main Hanas of Malacandra, would be so different from what we would expect to see.
Okay, the Sorns were fine.
You just didn't like the beavers,
the otters, and the weird frog insect things. Neither of them made
fliffle
sense.
triggers.
He could have easily have just made the frog things into like little frog goblins, and I would have been way more on board with it.
Just make it like straight up Grendel.
I'm not lying though. If he had just made it more like that, yeah, it would be 1,000 times better. He made them unnecessarily wacky.
I feel like he wanted it to be the land of the dragons.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But well, okay. Outside of that, I think this book does have some good like moral lessons in it still.
Oh, it absolutely does. It discusses a lot of moral things in this book. But before we get into that, Will, this is your second read through, right?
Yeah.
What did you think your second time through?
I'm definitely ranking it lower than the first time because I know what's happening. So
you also know what he's capable of writing versus this.
Yeah, it's a weird book, and I thought that the first time too. And I was weirdly paced, and basically everything Andrew says, like the animals are weird. Like, why did you pick a name that I can't even read?
You can't pronounce it at all.
Yeah, and yeah, I pretty much echo the sentiment, and it's not as good as the next two books. This one didn't felt like, as you said in the very beginning, it's basically like world building. It's more like the world dictionary versus an actual story, in my opinion. And it's just like, the next two are better.
Funnily enough, I had a different experience. Like the first time I read this book, I hated it. Like really, really did not like this book. But then I read Paralandra, and it redeemed a lot of this book for me. And then by the time I got through the third book, I was like, okay, I can understand what he was doing with this book, even if I didn't necessarily like it. And now in my second read through, because I've already read the whole trilogy once, I'm enjoying this book quite a bit more than I did the first time.
Okay.
Well, okay, I guess I can understand that because I had that same perspective with The Magician's Nephew.
Yeah, probably.
But at the same time, The Magician's Nephew doesn't make me go through 2/3 of the book before I find actual dialogue of substance. And that's the part that I struggled with this book is the first 2/3 felt like it was valueless to me.
I mean, most of the important part of this book happens in that third part of the book. I would agree with that. And then it takes
like 60 pages.
Yeah, it's not a long book. So like, I mean, could this book have been longer? No, I'm glad he didn't stretch it out further.
No.
I wish he actually fleshed it out.
Yeah, I wish he had done something to capture your attention, like really capture it in the first half.
I think this would make a better movie than it makes a book, actually.
I don't know if it would.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the creatures are too damn wacky. I think I would, if this is to be paired with drugs, maybe. But I don't see it as like I want to see it.
I don't know if you filmed it really dark, it could be an interesting.
Dark, maybe. Okay, yeah. If this is like a horror film,
well,
no,
I mean, think
no.
about...
He means so dark you can't see the weird creatures.
Oh yeah, it's just a pitch black.
No.
They left the lens cap on the camera.
Yes.
I think depending on how you would depict the otter things, it could be an interesting book. But it would be a bit Uncanny Valley talking with beavers. It'd be a bit uncanny.
They're otters, Chris. They're
whatever.
different.
I keep calling them beavers. I don't care. But the swords would be cool to depict in CGI. Mm-hmm. That'd be pretty neat.
Uncanny Valley. When I say Uncanny Valley, I literally just mean that it's so similar to something that we already know.
Oh,
it's so stupid that it it's not even believable. It's just, I don't know, man. Uncanny Valley. Yeah, that's what I meant by it. It's too similar to something we already know.
Too similar to real.
Yeah, but it done in a way that makes you just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I mean, the way he describes them, he's like, they have a seal's head and the body of a...
They're an otter. Like, okay. Just say it's an otter, Lucas.
Well, the piffle triffle thingies are tapir-like heads with frog-like bodies.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of left it up to your imagination.
Insects. Yeah, that one was stupid.
And the best part was like, we've given them things to build, but they have to be challenging or they won't do it. It's like their personality is like, we have to do important things or we won't do it.
Yeah.
All right. So what would you say your main takeaways from this book were?
Well, let's go with the obvious. C.S. Lewis, Stranger Danger.
Yep.
Again.
Who hurt you?
Who hurt you, C.S. Lewis?
Well, if he wrote this 20 years before Narnia, somebody must have hurt him much earlier on.
Dude, someone hurt him in life. That's all I can say. C.S. Lewis writes every single do not trust somebody scenario for children that you can imagine.
Well, this isn't a children's book.
I know, but he writes it literally for this is for adults, fine, but he writes that for people.
This is at least young adults, possibly adults.
Yeah, every single form of do not trust uncles, do not trust strangers, do not trust whatever.
Do not trust scientists.
Don't trust scientists.
He has a whole book on that. I think it's the Abolition of Man. I think that one's the one all about science being bad.
Since you brought it up though, the scientist thing, he has a huge distaste for scientists who care only about the work, not the human cost.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's basically his problem, right? Is that they're willing to sacrifice anybody for whatever their goal or accomplishment is.
He's like, isn't it worth isn't the cost or the reward worth the cost? And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, there's certain lines that you do not cross, and you don't get to play God type of thing. And that's C.S. Lewis's whole lesson between this book and technically The Magician's Nephew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't play God.
It's
right.
the same concept, right? There's a lot in this actually. Once you get to that later part, I'm trying to think of something. Oh, so the Harasa, or however you pronounce the otter people, the whole concept that they had that a pleasure is full grown only when it is remembered, I thought was an interesting take.
Yeah.
Remembered in a way that you don't like they don't remember anything in a way that they're like, we need to go back to that. It's like remembered fondly.
It's like a wine. It's like a wine. Like you bottle up the experience into a memory, and then you get to experience it later.
Yeah, like you can.
That's how they.
They also felt that way about poetry. Like they don't repeat lines in poetry either.
Yeah.
It's like one time and the poetry's over.
Oh, it's nice how his perception of Sorns completely changes.
Yeah.
Like 180.
Completely, yeah. The Sorns end up being pretty cool. Although I will say, out of the 3 species on the planet, the Sorns would definitely be the creepiest looking.
No,
you think the Fiffle?
Those other things were way creepier. I'm sorry, dude. They were way creepier.
He's like trying to give them his watch. Like, here, you can have the watch. So that he's like, what? Didn't he try to give them his watch?
A Sorn. He tried to give a Sorn his watch.
Oh, a Sorn. I thought it was a Fiffle trigger.
No, it was a Sorn. Okay. Oh, the main take that they had, the Sorns had of humanity, is that every human wants to be Oyarsa himself. There must be rule, but how can creatures rule themselves? Was the question on like how can people be so terrible to each other?
Right. Because everybody wants to be their own Oyarsa. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's actually like a meaning behind the word. Or I looked this up. I looked up several words in this book. I think Oyarsa has like a Latin something.
It's obvious that do you guys agree, yes or no, that it's kind of obvious that the Oyarsa is like the archangel, like the whole. Yeah. It's so ours is clearly Lucifer.
Yep.
And that's why.
He's very on the nose in the next 2 books of what that is.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's super on the nose already, but he's like, oh, did you miss this? I'm gonna beat you over the head with it in the next couple books.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it previously too. The greater good does not love man; it would happily kill man for the end goal. But everyone claims that the greater good is for love of man. So. And then when that whole thing about between Devine, or however you say his name, and Weston, the Oyarsa recognizes that one is a broken man and one is a bent man.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do way more harm with a bent man than you can a broken man. Because the bent one still has like a mission.
Mm-hmm.
He's out there doing something. He sees it as he has to accomplish this task, and the damage he commits in that pursuit is going to be way worse than what the broken man ever does, because the broken man is just broken. He's not in some grand pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I can't really think of anything else that's major lessons here.
I think you definitely hit most of them on the head, if not all of them.
Because I was searching for these in this book in that first half. I'm just disappointed. And then I finally get to that final third. I'm like, shit, things I can actually write notes on.
Well, I did like the journey home, because there was this point where he's like, I don't even care if the ship blows up. I'm like one with the universe. And then as soon as he realizes his life is on the line, he's like, no, I want to live. It's like, this is so legit. Like,
there's also his
exactly
portion,
how somebody would feel.
Yeah.
There's also his portion about wanting to redefine space as the heavens. Yeah. That it's not just devoid. So
well, he's like, when he gets up there, he's like calling this space. And I don't really think about this, but every time I read this book, I'm like, oh yeah, it is kind of weird that we call it space when there's so much stuff in it.
Well, I mean, everyone kind of uses it as dark, but it wouldn't be dark, because the only reason we have darkness is because the planet is facing away from that you're on. The part of the planet you're on is facing away from the sun. So
right,
it's very bright.
It's very bright everywhere else.
It's outer space because we are currently inner space of the atmosphere. Yeah. That's why it's called outer space.
Oh yeah. I just thought it was funny because the word, when you think of space, you think of void, something with nothing between two objects. But space in reality is full of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's funny, and he's like, I want to call it redefine it the heavens because we're outside of Earth's atmosphere. And because he had this experience with the Oyarsa and everything else, it's like, okay, I mean, I could understand that. The Oyarsa live outside of planet Earth.
In fairness, he's just reverting back to the ancient human take of the skies being the heavens.
Yeah. Sorry. I had a point, but I don't know if I want to get into it. But never mind.
Go for it. Go for it.
Go for it. I want to hear Will's point.
No, yeah, you can't just tease us.
You got to go for this.
Well, I just read this as we were going through this, but apparently he had a book before this called The Allegory of Love. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh, is this about why the otters only have made it once?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's no. So it's all about redefining the way that we look at the heavens and stuff like that.
Okay.
But one that you see in the book is Melicandra is a place of peace, but it's Mars, which is named after the god of war. So that's supposed to be like a paradigm flip. So you probably actually are onto something with the Mal part, as how like you would expect it to be bad, but it's not.
Well, hey man, he still at least keeps Venus to be that busty lady.
True. Well, I mean, no one wants to change that part. So, but he wanted to reintroduce the post-medieval Renaissance of the 12th century. And then with the novels of the universe is a vision of the field of heaven, peopled by etheric angels. So apparently he started that concept in this other book. And then this was more of like a novelization of like a more of a philosophy type book.
Oh, there was one point I missed too. One thing that was interesting. He talks about how the planet, when they're talking about how the other planet once had life on the surface and everything, the point was made that a world is not made to last forever, much less a whole race.
Yeah, that was interesting, like that thought process.
Yep.
So that's basically all my notes that I managed to take. Let's go back to how he hates scientists, because even in that final note, he's just like, this one guy's a douche.
Yeah.
I think C.S. Lewis has a healthy questioning of progress in science for the sake of progress with no concerns for the detriment of humanity.
As I said before, science does not have morality. It's not supposed to have morality. So you have to make sure that what you're pursuing, I mean, it's like in every endeavor. It's like the same with politics, the same thing with religion, same thing with leading people in any way. You have to make sure you're taking into account the human aspect and not being an asshole.
Science does not always say, should we? And that's usually
no, it doesn't.
It never does, Chris. Yeah. It literally never asks that question.
It's not supposed to. It's not. Yeah. I mean, a hammer doesn't ask.
It depends on the person using the science to ask that question.
Exactly.
I mean, everything is dependent on the person. That's why if you ever have anything being led by a person, you need to have a good vetting process to make sure that you're getting the type of person you want.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Because someone's always looking to wield power for their own goals.
Because we're bent.
We're bent.
I am really looking forward to you reading Paralandra, though, Andrew. I will be honest.
Why?
Because I'm curious what you'll think of it. It's like definitely my favorite C.S. Lewis book.
There's no way in hell it's going to be my favorite. If it's anything like this book, there's no way.
It's not. These three books that are a trilogy are more disconnected than the Narnia books, other than Ransom is in all three.
Nothing's better than The Horse and His Boy. Let's just go with that.
Well, like you go from this, which is like a philosophy book, a space and philosophy book, where C.S. Lewis like just vomits space and philosophy into a 160-page book, and you end up into Paralandra, which is like a novelization of Screwtape Letters almost.
Okay,
it's really freaking good.
And specifically one story from Genesis.
Yes, one story, but it ends very differently, and it's almost like C.S. Lewis is asking the question of like, what if?
It's funny that this is Chris's favorite book because I feel like this kind of undermines Christianity.
I really felt this one hard when I read it the first time.
Yeah, it's honestly like very, very
hey Chris,
heretical.
Hey Chris.
Well, I mean, if in fact this were like C.S. Lewis positing that it could have happened, that would be very heretical. Yeah.
Oh no, man! If this was a world lit only by
if
fire,
you go back in time and
might have died.
I'm just saying, like, if you could actually be there when the devil's trying to tempt Eve, that's what this story basically is.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
Just give it away, man. I was dancing around it.
What you're telling me, Chris, is that if C.S. Lewis was just a century or two earlier, he might have been burnt.
A century? No, they weren't doing that stuff in the 1700s.
Okay, fine.
300
years earlier.
They weren't doing that in the 1600s either.
Definitely weren't burning people in 1600s.
By a man with a red robe.
No, because they weren't talking about space in this way, or writing novels about space at the time. So
yeah, he would have been burnt just for the concept alone.
You talking otters?
This is a.
You're talking otters in space? Burn the heretic. No,
yeah. Otters don't have sex.
No, they would.
Immaculate conception for otters.
For otters. Oh God. Jeez. No. Anyways, I'm looking forward to Perelandra though. I think the whole psychology of it is the most interesting.
Yeah. I will say, of the three books, my favorite is the third one because it'll be like The Horse and the Boy for Andrew because like the actual adventure story.
Well, somebody was talking to me about it, and I had forgotten this. The first part of the third book is super long before you actually get into.
Yeah, but it's actually like a cohesive adventure.
It is a cohesive adventure.
There's a goal.
You could read the third book only, and you'd be fine.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, they tell you what the goal is, and the characters move towards it instead of just like I'm in this place.
So it's actually a journey. Okay.
Yeah, and like so again, Perelandra is really interesting for like the things that makes you feel and think about. But really, Ransom just shows up at this place and he observes things happening, and then that's the story.
Well, to be fair, the defining characteristics of Ransom come from the first two books, and then you see the fulfilled Ransom in the third book. So, like, it matters that you read the first two.
I think I know enough about Ransom already because I know about
because he wrote Lord of the Rings.
And he did drugs. Okay, let's just.
And he didn't have interspecies intermingling like the dryads in Narnia.
Oh my gosh, that would have been hilarious if he done Tolkien dirty that way.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Ransom hooking up with the otters.
Oh my God. And that's like half the book is he's just going to town.
I think I grabbed the wrong Silent Planet.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, then he switches it back to beavers and makes it.
That was actually half the pages that fell out of this.
Yeah.
If you take the pages that fell out of this and you just tape those together, it's actually that story.
Andrew's got the unabridged version.
And he starts calling him his precious.
Oh my.
Introduces him to the Eye of Sauron.
then when he's done with the beavers, then he moves on to the Sorns.
And
finally the Fiffle Triggers.
The Fiffle Triggers.
That's horrifying as a concept, Chris. Please don't.
No, this interspecies intermingling never happens in the book, and thank God it doesn't, because I would not be able to read these books.
Be scary. I bet there's one bent creature that wants that.
on this planet, there's probably somebody on this planet that has a fan fiction about Out of the Silent Planet. I'm sure that exists. There's furries of all shapes and sizes on this planet. So, anyways.
I just, I'm
sure somebody's into beavers
and see if you can find any.
I'm sure somebody's into otters and beavers on this.
No, I meant someone who tried to make a costume of these weird otters.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe I don't know.
It's a couple's costume.
Let's get into the rating. Can we get into rating this book instead of the intergalactic interspecies relations?
Yes, this is a solid
This is a solid. Maybe not. I'm giving this one a 4.
Sheesh.
Out of 5?
Yeah.
What? Take off your C.S. Lewis goggles, man.
Yeah, man. I know you
guys are gonna rank it lower, so I'm giving it a
You don't need to. You don't need to
You
weigh
don't
it.
need to balance us.
What kind of weird egalitarian society you forming here, man?
We're not communists, Chris.
the one that C.S. Lewis would be proud of.
Well, you guys did.
Well,
I
want to give
so
it
dirty, and I feel like this is.
I want to give this a 3.5, but you guys aren't going to give it a 3.5, so I'm giving.
So just give it what you think it's.
Well, 3.5. We don't do halves.
We have definitely done halves.
We've done halves before. Don't pull this crap.
Fine, 3.5.
Am I supposed to go next? Sorry, I was waiting for Andrew.
Yeah, you go next.
Well, Andrew said it was a solid, and then went completely.
I would say it's a solid 2 in my book.
Oh God.
I won't be as cruel as Will was to the last battle. I'll say this is a 1.5.
Oh God, I'm moving back up to a 4.
It's a 1. No, like this one is his worst book I've ever read. And I
don't think it's a bad book though. Like I guess if I was to compare
C.S. Lewis book, it's bad.
But if I was to compare this to every book on the market, I can't possibly go that low with it.
I can't.
C.S. Lewis doesn't have a bad book.
No. You forget. Like I have a valid reason, Chris. I can't say that he created a good world. Like that's my problem with it. This book standalone right now. Standalone. The universe he created on Mars kind of sucks. Like the world itself is cool, but the species suck. The alien life sucks. You create them to be more compelling, and the book's instantly better.
Yep.
That's my problem.
I thought the Saurians were the most compelling out of the 3 species.
And that's sad.
I think the thing is, it's frustrating because they had a really interesting concept with there's these deities that are controlling each planet, and then there's things that are happening like on that galactic scale. But I just didn't like the execution.
I'll move it to a 2. I'll move it up to a 2 because the planet itself, what he did with it is cool. But the species and the way he wanted that, it's too uncanny valley for someone to really enjoy it too much, I think. The average person, Chris.
I'd be curious
what
the opinions
here.
I would be curious what the opinions were of people contemporary with his release.
I mean, maybe it was less cruel, but I mean, okay. The problem is it does not hold up the test of time. Narnia holds up the test of time. It will always be good.
And that's how I feel about Paralandra, actually.
So not if it has the same freaking species in it.
It does not.
Oh, it does not? Okay, fine. Then that's instantly an improvement. But this one, Out of a Silent Planet, does not hold up because the concept of
you mean Paralandra wouldn't be good if we had Otter Eve and Otter Adam?
Not at all, man. Not at all. I actually would have just said I'm out and given it a 0.
He's like, don't eat the Havla.
I shouldn't have to tell Otter
like chipping away.
Yeah.
Just like chipping away at the fucking bunny, like.
It's not how otters eat, but okay.
I'm thinking like bunnies. I don't know.
You're on like every other type of creature.
All good.
This is why this world sucks, because you can't even keep it straight what type of furred creature it is.
All right. So is there anything else we need to say about this book?
No.
There's better books.
Yes.
If you're looking for a C.S. Lewis book, this isn't the.
I mean, if you want to read the Space Trilogy, you should read the whole Space Trilogy. But if you only want to read if you only want to read standalone quality books, I'd probably go with Paralandra or the third one.
Yeah, and I think most people will like the third one the most.
The third one hits a little close to home with modern society.
Well, I look forward to reading the other 2 because I need something that's like a palate cleanser from this one.
Well, apparently you don't like the Cuckoo's Call or whatever either. So.
Oh, I don't have a problem with it so far.
Oh, okay. All right. So for the record, next week we're reading Robert Galbraith, J.K. Rowling. 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks.
A week and a half from the airing of this podcast.
Yes.
It is the J.K. Rowling mystery series that's now got a TV show called Strike on BBC. Did I say BBC twice?
I don't know.
I probably
You
did.
can keep saying it. I'm sure it will trend somewhere on the internet.
BBC. BBC. Anyways, the British Broadcasting Channel, just for the record. Definitely not whatever Andrew is trying to propose here. But J.K. Rowling, it's a book, it's a detective series about like a former, I think, what is the MI whatever?
What?
MI6?
MI6, yeah. I think it's a former MI6 member or something, or military, something along those lines. But regardless, that's what we're going to be covering in about a week and a half. And it's a very different book from what we have been covering, that's for sure. And I picked it, and it's not C.S. Lewis, so there's that.
Yep. You found out about another author you can read.
Mm-hmm.
We're proud of you, Chris. Uber
Andrew's literally gonna clip me saying BBC. You're gonna roll that all the way for like a whole minute, so it can be a short of me just going BBC.
And you keep doing it for us.
You keep doing it.
We should end it.
Yeah, we should end it before this gets ugly.
Oh my goodness. Well, at least we didn't have to like actually interact with the friffle trigger things.
Just wait. There's going to be comments from them in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
The friffle triggers?
Yep. They're going to visit just for the chat.
I think the planet's dead by now. It's been 70 years since it's been written. No, like 80 years now. Well, not quite. But anyways, I enjoyed rereading it. I know you guys at least somewhat enjoyed it. Maybe.
I mean, it's not like a bad book. It's just maybe bad science fiction.
Actually, I didn't even think the science fiction was that bad. All right. On that note, we will see you hopefully on a CHRILLCAST episode here this week. Either this one or the following one will, because the Game Awards just happened, so might as well rank our favorite media we've done in the year. So we'll be discussing books, movies, TV, etc. on our other channel. So if you like Printed and Pressed and you like us,
I don't know why.
I don't know why, but we're going to be talking about other forms of media this week, so that'll be fun. Might even get to talk about the Borgias with Andrew. We'll see. But as always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
And I'm Andrew.
And you won't hear from us on Falcondra, but you might see us on the next episode of
Printed and Pressed.
See y'all
Read
later.
Cuckoo's Calling. Join our book club.
Oh, yeah. Let me go to that.
Join our book club. Follow us on Twitter. All these things that Chris is about to forget.
That's all good. Oh, you know what? I'm not signed into Goodreads. Anyways, I'll drop some links. Goodreads, book clubs, Twitter. I don't think we have a Facebook for this yet. No. But if we did, you should follow us there too. All right. See y'all on the next one.